Are you sick of scrolling through Netflix and Hulu searching for movies that are high quality and family friendly? Christian Cinema has thousands of movies available on demand that you can watch anytime, anywhere. When you sign up for a giving membership, a premium offering from Christian Cinema, you can watch 5 free movies every month. Learn more about becoming a giving member at givingcompany.com/giving membership and start watching great movies today. The other side of the road is safe, where we sidestep being bothered and avoid getting involved. But rolling up your sleeves and boldly going where few dare to tread, that's walking through Samaria. Each week on our podcast, we introduce you to the special few who walk in the spirit of the Good Samaritan. On behalf of the Giving Company and your hosts, David Hendrickson and Dan Riveros, welcome to the Walking Through Samaria podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Walking Through Samaria podcast. I'm your host, Dan Riveros, with my co-host,
David Hendrickson.
What's up, brother?
Hey, good to see you. We're here.
We're here.
It's a Friday.
Yeah, I'm ready for it, man.
Yeah. Are you?
Oh, yeah.
Are you?
It's been a week.
I was in Nashville all week. I just got back, landed this morning. So,
not eating anything. Eat anything good over there?
So all the food was pretty good. No complaints at all. But I did not have the hot chicken.
I'm gonna change your life right now. Forget about the hot chicken.
Okay.
It's good, but it's good. Yeah, sure. That's what they're known for. Oak Steakhouse in Nashville.
Really?
There's one here in Alpharetta, actually. There's one here in
Yeah,
Avalon.
I know the one here. Same one?
Yeah, but it's not the same
It's
thing.
not the same.
The service,
Gotcha.
the food,
Yeah.
wow.
I ate at Adele's.
Adele's.
Which is downtown.
Is that like a high-end steakhouse or what is it like?
So it's not. It's kind of American, but just a great atmosphere near the Gulch, which is one of the cool spots. There's so many in Nashville. So
yeah, Nashville's a cool town.
So you want to know what else is significant about today?
Tell me.
2 weeks from today, Hood to Coast 2022 kicks off, the mother of all relays, which I will be doing for the 5th time.
Sounds like you shouldn't have been at that restaurant.
That's probably true. That's
awesome. So who are you doing it with?
Yeah, so our guest today is Brian Frazier from World Vision. Brian, welcome to the Walking Through Samaria podcast.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. So excited.
Yeah, so Dan, Brian kind of took over Hood to Coast 2019, Brian, is that right?
That's right.
And just you could get a sense for his passion for the event, his operational skills. Like it's just been, I've missed 1 year. I think I missed last year, but I ran in 2019. I did the COVID remote run. I skipped last year and I'm back at it this year. So, but Brian is kind of the commish of Team World Vision at Hood to Coast, right,
Nice.
Brian? That's how I would describe it.
I think that's the right word. That makes me feel a lot more important than maybe I really am.
There you go. Yeah, I like it.
So for our listeners who don't know what Hood to Coast is, tell us exactly.
Yeah,
what
Brian,
this is.
take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Hood to Coast is this 200-mile relay race that starts at the top of Mount Hood, where there's literally, in 2 weeks, there will be snow on the ground. There'll be people out skiing. And we head down the mountain and through some of the world's most beautiful mountainside country with the Douglas firs extending to the heavens as you're running out there, and you head all the way out to Seaside, Oregon, and you finish on the Pacific coast and you put your feet in the water. But it's amazing. You've got 12-member teams that are out there, each running their own sets of legs. So you definitely don't have to run the whole distance yourself, but you're in vans. And it really is one of the most fun races that we get to be a part of, because it's pretty much camp for adults, where you just get to go be out by yourself, do a lot of things that you don't get to do when you're at home, and just have a ton of fun out there and run a little bit and hand off to the next person, jump in the van and off you go, and all types of things you get to eat and talk about when you're hanging out with your buddies. It's a great time.
200 miles, even 10%.
That's right. That's right. Divided by 12. It's still a big number.
It's still a big number.
Brian does it in his sleep, but for some of us, it's more challenging. Well, we're going to talk a lot about why Team World Vision embraces Hood to Coast. But Brian, before we do that, I'm going to read your bio for our listeners, if you don't mind. So we're going to hear about your background, and then we're going to have a really great time. We've had a number of World Vision folks on the Walking Through Samaria podcast. It was actually a World Vision trip that was the catalyst for this podcast, which we'll also talk about. But Brian, let's start with you. Here we go. Brian Frazier serves as the director for peer-to-peer fundraising at World Vision in a new role started in 2022. Brian began his tenure there in 2010, joining Vision Fund International, World Vision's microfinance division, where he led best-in-class initiatives for its banks all over the world. In 2016, his passion for World Vision's work and running met, and he joined Team World Vision, leading its operations as it grew from a $5 million program to a $9 million program. In 2019, he assumed a new role leading the operations for all church-engaging programs until 2022, when his passion for seeing the church activated for the poor through peer-to-peer fundraising was able to be reimagined. Brian is the oldest of 3 children to 2 incredible parents growing up in the Woodlands, Texas. He attended Texas A&M University with an undergraduate degree in petroleum engineering, whereupon he went to work for Marathon Oil Company for 7 years afterwards. He also holds a master's degree in international operations from the Bauer School of Business at the University of Houston. In 2007, his career then took a God-inspired turn to work for, help me out, Brian. Ujjivan Financial Services, one of the world's leading microfinance banks in Bangalore, India, where he eventually served as the head of operations, serving over 1 million clients across the country. Brian is husband to his wife, Colette. Since 2001, they have 4 amazing children, Corbin, Hadan, Kai, and Naya. He has held numerous lay leadership positions in their church over the years and has a passion for music, Bible study, and God's work all over the world. Brian has traveled to more than 30 countries where he has worked and served over the years. He and his family have sponsored children at World Vision since the early days of their marriage. As an engineer by background, his passion is serving his brothers and sisters all over the world with sustainable solutions, and believes that activating the church in America to shift wealth into those solutions strategically, holistically, and in God-honoring ways is the calling on his life. Brian, again, so glad to have you on the Walking Through Samaria podcast.
Thanks so much. That was a mouthful, and I appreciate you
going good.
To the trouble of reading it.
And he's also the commish for Hood to Coast, so we'll talk about that. But you know, Dan has gotten used to this, Brian, over 4 seasons of Walking Through Samaria that we have done together. We got to weave in college athletics, you know, in every conversation.
Every time.
Every conversation that we have. There's a meme going around on the internet, Dan, and it's got a picture, and it's like the world is burning, you know, and it shows buildings on fire and all that. And at the bottom, it says, in the South, when does football start? Like that's what we do here in the southeastern part of the country as we talk college athletics. So you're an A&M guy, Brian. You're an Aggie. So the Passion pastor in Washington, D.C., his name is escaping me, as a Texas A&M Aggie, Ben Stewart.
Oh, nice.
Ben Stewart is an Aggie.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Ben and I were at A&M at the same time.
Really?
I know Ben.
So he talks about that midnight thing when you have to kiss somebody.
That's right.
Standing next to you.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's one of the things that we talked about when he was on our podcast. But, you know, give us the skinny on Jimbo Fisher. Is he cheating? How'd you get that number one? How'd you get that number 1 recruiting class last year?
Well, you know, it is what it is. It's like, I mean, it's like every other football program out there. I'm sure Jimbo has figured out the rules.
That's right.
Enough to know where the lines are and what can be stretched. And, you know, I'm one of those Aggies too. I love college football. I love following it. But, you know, that I wish it wasn't about the money, but in the end, that's what it's become.
It sure seems that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
We're proud of our program.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, there were 2 teams that beat Alabama last year, so we could just soak that up. Texas A&M and our Georgia Bulldogs. So we have that in common.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you and I were talking before we started recording. I sort of, you know, I had you as a Chicago guy because there's a lot of Team World Vision action, I think, happening in Chicago. But
right.
You moved about 18 months ago, I would say, back home. If you grew up in the Woodlands, which I think is north of the city of Houston, you and the family trekked back to Houston. So give us the scoop of Chicago versus Houston and why you guys made that move. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I love Chicago. I love the people in Chicago. Love our church there, Emmanuel Bible Church in Berwyn. But yeah, like you said, I'm a Texan through and through. And it just so happened, you know, my oldest son, Corbin, was about, you know, trying to figure out what he wanted to do after high school, what colleges he was interested in, and Texas A&M was top on his list. So once he got accepted and he had made the decision that's where he wanted to go, mom and dad were like, okay, we want to be close to where he's at. And, just the way the pandemic was and working rhythms had changed so much by that point that moving back to Houston made a lot of sense for us. And fortunately, World Vision was super accommodating to me and to allowing that type of move to happen. And we miss our friends terribly in Chicago, but we're happy to be back home.
Good for you. That's awesome. So Dan, I think didn't you make your first trek to Chicago? You sent me some pictures.
Yeah, I've been 2 times now. I went a month ago, actually.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was my second time there.
Okay.
Yeah. Love Chicago.
Okay.
Really beautiful city. So big.
Yeah.
It just feels huge compared to Atlanta. And I love that they got like a bike system over there. Like when I'm there, I'm riding a bike everywhere.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You can't do that.
That's
in
pretty
Atlanta.
cool. Yeah.
Hey, so not to get too off subject, but Chicago versus Houston, which place has the best food if you had to pick one? And I know that's two totally different cultures.
Just look at the people. Houston, we eat well, and you can get fresh seafood that has been caught either that morning or the day before pretty easily here. And so I love me some Tex-Mex and some seafood, and maybe even a combination of both.
Yeah.
So I'll take the food here in Houston every day of the week over deep dish in Chicago.
I can't imagine David's on the same page with that, right? Not a Chicago.
Oh my gosh. I have so much of my heritage in Chicago.
Yeah.
So
I need to go do the Taste of Chicago.
Yeah.
I know that's
fun.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
a ton of fun.
Well,
yeah.
It doesn't sound like you're losing either way, whichever city you're in, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we can do both. I'll do deep dish. Don't worry.
So Brian, I learned that you and the family moved, back to Houston. Another thing that I learned is that you were a petroleum engineer, and you did your first stint out of college in corporate America. And we actually have a term, Dan, for those of us that did a stint in corporate America before we, moved on to philanthropic work. This came from a conversation, Brian, that we had with Philip Langford, who was the president of International Justice Mission, USA, and I think he's just left there. But he went and did big law, out of Auburn Law School or Alabama Law School, wherever. He's an SEC guy as well. So you want to hear our term? Do you want to hear our term of endearment for people that did a corporate stint?
Tell them.
Corporate weenie. Corporate weenie.
Oh, no.
That's what it is. That's what I was. I did the exact same thing. I worked for Union Carbide and GE and McKesson after college. So we sort of share that bond.
I feel like I'm not allowed to say it because I haven't done my corporate stint.
That's right. So talk a little bit about that, Brian, if you don't mind. I mean, petroleum engineer, you're in big oil. And now we're talking about peer-to-peer fundraising and church mobilization and hood to coast. Like, how'd that happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many interweaving pieces to that on the outside don't make any sense whatsoever. And it was often is the case with our lives. But yeah, I mean, I grew up, as I mentioned here in Houston, obviously a big background of the oil industry here. My dad worked in the oil industry. Both of my grandfathers worked in the oil industry. So in a lot of ways, it wasn't necessarily assumed that I would, go down that path, but the path was a lot easier to go down that role. It was because it was so familiar. But really, it was, in college. You had mentioned the Passion Conference earlier. I went to Passion in 1997.
Wow.
Young kid, and was really cast vision. Pastor John Piper was up there on stage talking about doing hard things and going to faraway places. And but I really, it made sense for me that God still made me who I was. Like I didn't necessarily was going to be someone different than the skills and gifts that he had given me. So I kept moving forward in that and thinking, you're preparing me, God, for something bigger. I just don't know exactly what that might be, but let's keep moving into the forward in the oil industry. And maybe you have something for me in faraway places through that. And, it's like so many things. Our futures are not often clear, but we just keep taking steps of faith. And yeah, so for 7 years, I'm working in the oil industry for Marathon Oil and really building up skills that God was going to use later. But at the same time, becoming a global citizen and what he was doing all over the world. And yeah, so it really helped a lot in preparing me. So, and then fast forward those 7 years, I was getting my MBA, and that's when God just suddenly opened a door, and that door was into microfinance and providing financial services for the underserved communities. And when God opens a door, clearly you got to walk through that door in steps of faith. And so Colette and I, basically, when I finished schooling, we sold everything we owned. We packed up our 3 kids at the time, because we had 3 at the time, and put all of our belongings we still had in duffel bags, and we moved to India. And where you mentioned earlier, I worked there for 3 years before eventually coming over to World Vision and leading out our best practices all over in our banks all over the world. So I think my career, it really has never made any sense. But I believe that in my heart, God made me to be an entrepreneur at heart. But it's going out and trailblazing new opportunities, but the ROI isn't in dollars in my case. It's in kingdom impact.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to measure at times in human terms, but that's who he's made me to be. So I keep following.
That's awesome. Tell us about the new role. You're into something relatively new called peer-to-peer fundraising, or at least something reimagined, as you said in your bio, but that's kind of a new role for you, it sounds like. Tell us what that entails.
Yeah, it's a new role to the org, but we've had peer-to-peer programs going on for a long time. But it's really basically, it's as easy as saying, okay, we don't want people to just simply donate directly to our work, but we want them to advocate for our work. So it's not just about me, but it's about you and me together. It's inviting my friends, my family, my neighbors to come and join in community and be a part of supporting what God's doing all over the world. So community is an important aspect of what we do and advocating for those in need. So we have programs like Team World Vision that are out running marathons and half marathons all over the country. We've got invitationals like Hood to Coast, where we go out and running in fun places, or the London Marathon, or maybe climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And then we've also got a program called Child Ambassadors, which is where maybe it's just kids and child sponsorship that really stokes your fire, but running and hiking isn't necessarily your jam. So you want to just kind of go out and advocate on behalf of children and see more children get sponsored through World Vision. So these programs have been going on for many years, and now we've kind of all got them under one house and with one strategy that we're working through. So I'm super excited to be able to serve in this capacity and to continue, because my background was always in operations and systems and processes, and numbers, and financial stuff. But now I'm really living out that entrepreneurial spirit that's in me.
Good for you. That's awesome. Do you remember when Terry Johnson was on the show, Dan? So Terry Johnson, who is the major donor liaison here in the Southeast, Brian, and I think he's on Tony Frank's team. And I've known Terry for a long, long time. He actually he left corporate weeniedom for World Vision the exact same time that I left private equity to come work at Giving Company. And we've had him on the show. Anyway, he asked if I wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and I was like, no. Yeah. I said, no way.
You gotta say yes next time.
No. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But he did it. He and his daughter, I think Meredith, did it together. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
Yeah, that was one I had to pass on. Hood to Coast is hard enough.
Oh, damn. Come on. Mount Kili, let's do it.
The London one sounds a little more appealing.
Yeah, that London one does sound good.
Than Mount Kilimanjaro.
That's right.
Well, we could probably do like a whole episode on this next question I'm about to ask you, but maybe if you could, give us a couple nuggets. But you've been all around the world, different places. What do you want people in the U.S. to know about your experiences overseas?
Yeah, wow, that could be a can of worms. And I, as my bio mentioned, I have, with my work, whether it's been working in India or even some of the preparation that led up to that, and then certainly as I started in microfinance at World Vision, because we own and operate banks in about 40 different countries all over the world. So I think just the thing that that I would just want people here in the U.S. to know is, I mean, obviously it would be very easy for all of us here in the U.S. to just kind of live our lives and focus on what's going on here and not be too concerned about what's going on in other places. But which is harder to do these days when we've got a lot of suffering and things going on that is impacting things like oil prices and inflation and things like that. But I just would want people to know people are people, just like like you guys and me, made in the image of God, beautiful, rich rich in things that we don't necessarily have here in the U.S. And some of my best friends over the years are people that don't live here, and it's really because that they're different than me that we've been able to have some shared experiences together, and that's really united us as through friends. So, often we see in the media that the world is a scary place, and it's really not. There are some scary things that are going on right now, or that could be going on, or emergency situations and relief situations that we get to be a part of at World Vision. But for the most of the parts of the world, that's these types of things are not happening, and it really is. These are places where there's something new to learn and experience with every new place or new people that are out there that we can meet. And certainly in a connected world that we live in now, we should take those opportunities.
That's awesome. Love it. We're gonna talk about one of those people moments a little bit later. But before we go there, Brian, you mentioned in your bio that you're advocating for the church in America to direct funding to sustainable solutions. And when I kind of read that, and Dan and I have had this posture for at least as long as we've had this podcast, if not longer, and that is the church sure does look different when it's doing something. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm over biased about that because that's just how I roll. But it seems to me that a lot of, and I don't want to categorize Big C, the church, right? Or call it the American church or the Western church or whatever. But it does seem that there's a fair amount of emphasis on kind of self, I hate to say it, in the church, right? And to me, the church it's important. Don't get me wrong. Relationship with God, being right with God, being obedient to God. Those are all super important things, and the church has to play a role there. But it sure seems to me, again, to be repetitive, that the church is its healthiest when it's mobilizing resources to where they need to be directed. I don't know if that's what you meant by your statement, but tell us a little bit about what that looks like to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm really resonating with what you're saying. I think so often we're taught that, discipleship and sanctification look only like Wednesday night Bible study or small group time together when we're meeting at somebody's house, which all those things for me are all about one part of that process, one piece of that, where when we, like you mentioned, when we become activated, that's where we're putting all those things into action and seeing that sharpening, seeing being made into the image of Jesus really, really happening. We're in a unique period of history right now. I think we can all resonate with the fact that we've just come through this pandemic globally, and if we're honest, it has had a very hard impact on the church, starting with the pastor. I mean, being a pastor and an elder of a church right now is a very difficult challenge. And at World Vision, we believe in a couple of important things in this regard. I mean, we believe obviously that our work in the communities where we serve all over the world is holistic and is at a top level of excellence. And we believe that America has immeasurable resources that the rest of the world, especially these places where we work, are in need of. But we, if the church here in America is, or at least maybe even our own local church, because I think we all know of these situations on a very real and personal vessel. And if there has been any hardships or challenges over the last couple of years, you can really resonate with that. But that's often where God meets us, is in hard times and hard places. And healing is often happening when God provides that spark and you get activated, you get called into action, and then you start to see transformation happening in your congregation, and people are buzz is created and people are excited to be a part of it, and discipleship's happening. And that's where we want to see the church being made into the image of Jesus. And it's through that action. I believe that's what pastors want for their churches. That's what we want. We want healthy churches that are experiencing these types of things. And so that's at World Vision, we have worked really hard to create experiences and programs that put the church congregation, put the people of the church at the forefront of seeing transformation in their lives, where the byproduct is kingdom impact and resources moving. But we're really asking the question, what does a healthy church look like that is being transformed in the image of Jesus, that is being called to action, not just with words, but with actually doing things. And so that's where these programs like Team World Vision come out, and our invitationals program and Child Ambassadors. We have an amazing program called Chosen, which is being shared with churches right now. And it's and you're seeing the church not just spend time learning, but then spend time doing and seeing transformation take place in that space. So it's exciting.
Love it.
Very
Love
cool.
it. That's awesome. All right. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about this crazy event called Hood to Coast, which I mean, what time is it? Like literally 2 weeks from right now, Brian. We're probably gonna be right at the top of Mount Hood, getting ready to go. Steve Haas, my captain, shout out to Steve. He gave me the last leg this year. So for the first time, I actually get to be the one, Dan, that crosses the finish line, and somebody's got to carry me to the ocean to get the cool water over my muscles. But I want to talk a little bit, Brian, about the event and then the cause, right? So let's kind of maybe separate those two things. You've been a relay runner for like 10 years, right? Will this be your 10th?
That's right.
So
10th year.
That's crazy. So why in the world did you sign up for Hood to Coast?
Yeah, it's a personal story for me. You mentioned earlier that I don't know if it was before we started recording or not, but I'm skinny. I look like a runner. And
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
History. But I was one of those, I'm working for World Vision or working in India. And I think on the outside, somebody might have said, oh, you're one of these people that's just out doing God's work and good on you. But actually, we all have those hard places that God still needs to work on. And for me, it was running. And somebody had invited me to do Hood to Coast back in 2013, a friend. And I'm like, I don't want to fundraise. I'm already doing God's work. This is good enough.
Yeah.
Because I'm a runner. And running can be a very singular thing. Like you go out, you do it, and it's all about you, and it's not about other people. And that was me, unfortunately. But Lopez Lamont, who's a former lost boy of South Sudan, who we could do, I'm sure you guys could interview him someday and do an entire story on his life. But he is an incredible individual. I had read his book, and in reading that book, Running for My Life, it just broke my heart. And I remember I was actually on a flight flying to Rwanda, which again, this is about South Sudan, but I was working in Rwanda at the time, and I'm on a flight. I'm in the middle of that book, and then all of a sudden it God just slammed that sledgehammer on my heart, and I'm full in tears. The flight attendant comes up next to me. She's saying, what's going on? Are you okay? I'm like, it's okay. God is like doing a work in me right now. And it basically was, you can do more. Why not? Why can't you do more? You take all these other things so seriously. Why can't you take advocating for kids and clean water in South Sudan just as seriously? And so that first year, Hood to Coast, 2013, I met Lopez at the race along with so many other amazing people. And it just sold me. I was a changed person after that event. Of God just continued to work in those hard places for me. And so, ever since then, that was all in.
That's awesome. So let's talk about, how this goes down. Like we've mentioned, you're the commish. You've been the commish since 2019. I think we're trying to raise $1.5 million. Is that right? Through this year's Hood to Coast. And so this, you mentioned Lopez Lamong, lost boy of Sudan, now South Sudan. He carried the flag in the 2008 Olympics, I believe. He's been a national champion. I won his jersey, 1 year, like Anthony Halpin called my name. Yeah. So I have a Team USA jersey with Lopez's signature on it. He actually sat next to me my very first Thursday night dinner at Hood to Coast 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Just talk about why is it that Hood to Coast is raising money for clean water in South Sudan? And, why is the $1.5 million so significant? How did we get to these kinds of numbers?
Yeah, I mean, South Sudan, I think a lot of times too, we can just we can think, especially here in the U.S., we can think, Africa, we've been doing a lot of great things. World Vision's been working there for decades, and that we kind of just think of it as one continent. But when you look at what, with the war and the country splitting in two, South Sudan being the youngest country in the world, and you look at the conditions on the ground there right now, roads, safe travel from one end of the country to the next is a luxury. You've got to take an airplane. You can't travel by bus or travel by car. This is because there's many places where roads just don't connect villages and cities right now. And so then when you talk about other infrastructure needs, this is, and then constant threat of war, unrest. Then you've got other emergency situations going on with rain or floods or those types of things, drought going on right now. People are very unsettled and are often moving around and displaced. And so in terms of needs and needs being very great in this country, we just, with Lopez's partnership, just has made sense for us to say, you know what, we're going to be the ones to kind of step in and address and put this as a priority and hold this particular situation up so that people are aware of what's going on. And the goal is really just about, it's really about a history of this event as much as anything else. If we could set a goal of $5 million today, I would do it. But where this team has come has been, back in 2013, we raised about $400,000 with 5 teams. And then each year we just seem to kind of build on the foundation of the previous year and keep going and going. And so 1.5 million us this year is that next step. We have, as of today, we have now raised $1.2 million more than any previous year that we have ever raised. We are on the doorstep of hitting that goal with only 2 weeks to go. And I believe God's going to do something even crazier over the next couple of weeks, and we're going to see us crush that goal. And we've been able to fund some specific projects too in the upper Nile region in the northern parts of the country with water mitigation and flood prevention, so that these communities in this specific project of over 5,000 farming families are now going to have not only access to clean water, but to be able to stay when there's flooding, so that a lot of this land management can take place to where they're going to be able to service crops year round, to be able to provide for their families. And we're getting to be part of that. So we're really excited about where we're at this year. And so much of that history, you mentioned Steve Haas, there's Steve Spear as well, Anthony Halpin.
Yeah.
And it's become a family. It's not about one person or one commissioner or one leader. We've got captains that are leading these teams that have been doing it just like you have, David, for so many years. And we're just building on the shoulders of all of these amazing people and what they have done over the years, and just asking God to say, what's next? What else can we do? Let's go further this year.
Wow. Yeah, while we're on the topic of like history and old wins, could you give us some of your favorite memories from Hood to Coast?
Oh, gosh. I think for anyone who's with 10 years, the years they start to bleed together a little bit too. But but for anyone who's done Hood to Coast, God seems to do a miracle every single year. Whether I mean, we had, I remember there was back in 2016, I think, there was this 70-year storm that hit. I mean, there was like 70-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh, my gosh.
It was like hurricane force kind of a situation. And most of the teams, we were just thinking, okay, what, because we were getting closer to the end of the race when the storm hit. And I mean, the finish line, which is normally this huge setup, they've got bands on the beaches, they've got this amazing finish line. It was completely devastated and blown off the beach. But then when I remember there was a moment where we were coming up to our van too, and they're ready to start to run their final 6 legs of the race. And we're like, guys, this is very dangerous out here. Like what, it's okay if we kind of call it in. And as I'm sharing this, as I was our team captain that year, they just looked at me like I had the plague, like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? We are finishing this race. And every team did that year. We had 10 teams and everybody just said, no, like we're here to do this. And so that was pretty incredible story. The other miracle that happened was in 2019. I'm having a call with the rental company for our vans. And I mean, for those that run, having a 12-passenger van for those 6 runners is really a much better setup than if you have a minivan that can seat 6 and you're all on top of each other. Or maybe you have extra people who are driving. So oftentimes we'll have 7 or 8 people in each van. Well, the rental car company is telling me, yeah, we're all ready. We're good. You've got all of your 20 minivans set up. And I'm like, wait a second. This is no. We need 12 passenger vans. And so and we've been doing this now for whatever it was, 6 or 7 years by that point. And so somehow it got messed up. And this was literally 2 days before we were showing up in Portland. You can imagine the stress that I was under at that point. We're calling every single rental car company in the entire Northwest and figuring out ways to fly people to those cities and drive the vans in. And we really had not gotten that far into it. And I was about to board the plane from Chicago to Portland. And the lady at the rental car company calls me. She's almost in tears. And she says, you know what? We just had a company who turned in all of their corporate rentals a month early than what the contract had called for. And we're going to have all your vans for you ready by the time you land. And I got on that plane full of tears.
Oh my God. It's a crazy story. Oh my gosh.
And God did it. God came through. And there always just seems to be a miracle year after year that he does.
Those are good. Those are good ones. So Brian, you and I have, kind of a common trait of diving into the numbers. So I'd like to talk about the numbers just a little bit more before we leave Hood to Coast. So How many teams do we have this year?
We have 9 teams.
We have
12 runners.
We have 9 teams of 12 runners. So those 9 teams have raised $1.2 million. So on average, each team is raising well more than $100,000 per team.
You got it. Yep.
So 1.5 million would be 30,000 people with clean water. Is that right?
Yep.
I mean, we use this easy math of it's real math, but it's also easy math. $50, this is what we talk about all day, right? At Giving Company, Dan, $50 gives somebody in a marginalized country access to clean water for life. I mean, it's not a lot of money in Western terms and US terms when you're talking about completely transforming somebody's life with just the provision of clean water.
It's incredible. And I think even just, thinking of it in terms of, these are awesome people that we're getting to serve and being a part of. People with dreams and plans for their kids and for their family in the same way that we do too. And why not give them that gift that can start the domino effect that's going to change everything? Because it so often starts with just having access to clean water before you can start having those dreams, whether it's education or food security or what have you. So
Well, let's get a little competitive, Brian, if you don't mind. Where's Team Yay? Where's Team Yay at in total donations?
Yeah, so Team Yay, I'm just have the dashboard up in front of me. You guys are at $150,000 raised so far. I mean, you guys,
wow,
you're not too shabby. I'll be honest. Yeah, you're doing pretty good. And my team, Team Running for Their Lives, we're a little bit behind. We're at 140,000.
Okay, all right. So and we're gonna have to get personal, Brian. I checked this morning. I'm at 22,420. Which is 448 people getting access to clean water. I think you're leading the head-to-head battle. Tell our listeners where you're at.
Yeah, so I just looking at it now too. I'm at $41,000.
What?
Wow.
Oh, come on. Oh, jeez.
So I would love for you to beat me. Come on.
I'm sure you would.
Let's put your listeners to the test.
All right, listeners, you need to sponsor me, David Henriksen. Forget about Brian Frazier. He's way ahead.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got to be like in the top 5, right, of all the runners?
I think I'm up there. Yeah. Top 3. We got Anthony,
wow.
Dave, Gonzalez are crushing it.
Yeah, those guys are ridiculous. Those guys are ridiculous. Yep. They're so good. So tell our listeners in all seriousness. I mean, it is fun. Before we kind of do the ask, there's really 2 separate pieces of this experience, maybe 3. One is, getting in shape to not die as you're going from Mount Hood to Seaside Beach in Oregon. There's the physical challenge of it. The second piece, and this is probably the order in which my personal journey went with Hood to Coast. Mm-hmm. It was like, hey, I got it. Like Steve Haas asked me to be on the team. Like I need to lose weight. I need to get in shape. The second part was, each runner kind of has a goal of $10,000 in donations. And this money goes direct to Team World Vision. It goes direct, to the programming. None of the runners process any of the money or anything like that. So it's such a good, stewardship kind of way to give money. But then the third part is the spiritual part. I mean, talk about weeping on planes. I wrote my last Facebook post after my very first Hood to Coast, just thanking my donors, sharing pictures, me and Ashton Eaton, me and the team, lots of stuff. And the spiritual component, I think, is probably the most riveting, right? I mean, when you get through with this and you realize what role you played in the kingdom and what the impact was, and the physical challenge that you went through, the whole thing. I mean, it's just riveting. I think Steve Haas asked our team for what word do you use when you finish the race? And I think that was the word that I gave him. So, that's how I describe it. Brian, you may have different descriptions of the experience, but tell our listeners, if they're interested, like, how can they get involved and contribute?
You did well. Yeah. Thanks so much. I think the easiest way to find David's page would be to go to teamworldvision.org/Hood to Coast. And then you can just scroll down and find, you can look up the runners that are on the team. You can find David Henriksen there, or look at his team, Team Yay 8, and donate there. Or you can, obviously you can donate directly to the event, but I would rather everybody find David's page, and certainly from that page you can also learn more about the race. You can learn more details about how the race works, and if anyone's ever interested in joining us in the future and being a part of this and running with us, we certainly would love to have that conversation with you too.
Yeah, Josh Wimberly had a team. I don't know if you remember Josh's team. Josh is a recruiter here in Alpharetta, Dan. He and I knew each other from Kings Ridge. And, we need to recruit Josh back to this thing.
I ask Josh every year. He's got Killy on his mind. So
does he really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
if you're not wanting to do Killy, he might pull you over to the dark side.
That's awesome. Well, Brian, as we close, this has been really fun. We've covered it all from SEC football to mobilizing churches to the amazing event and experience that is Hood to Coast with Team World Vision. talk about another weepy moment for me. Dan and I were in Ethiopia together with Eddie Brown and Marianne Osborne, and that experience. Dan, I always kid him because he was the one that got to cut the bread with the religious leaders, which is an Ethiopian tradition. But we were over there with World Vision, and we were there to see the product of our donations as a company. One of the reasons we're called Giving Company is the work that we do in the media space generates donations to World Vision for the purposes of clean water in sub-Saharan Africa. And so Marianne Osborne took us over. Mesrach Yele was there. Eddie Brown was there. I mean, we just had a great time. But we expected, to pretty much see wells and pipes and trenches and stuff. And one of our meetings, they actually let us participate in an interfaith forum. And our listeners, I know you've heard this because anytime I have somebody from World Vision on, I have to revisit the story. But I'm witnessing Muslim leaders and Christian leaders working together to build schools, to reduce child abuse, to reduce early marriage, to reduce divorce in the home. I mean, they grasp hands and say, we have to work for the purposes of peace under the umbrella of Christianity or Islam, depending on, which faith they were a part of. And, to all our listeners as well, I want you to know, World Vision doesn't water down their Christianity as they sponsor the Interfaith Forum. They just know that it's much better for religions to work together versus be, at odds with one another. And it makes a huge difference in the homes of children in Ethiopia. I mean, they were telling us that they go to one another's birthday parties and baptisms. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But one of the religious leaders was telling a story about how the Interfaith Forum and the work that World Vision was doing in Ethiopia helped her get her son to college. And he was going to the state university in Ethiopia. And that's when I lost it because Brian, much like your son, who's going to Texas A&M in Texas, my daughter at the time, and now since then my son, we're going to the University of Georgia, which is where I live. So I can't even hardly breathe. I mean, I can't speak. I'm weeping because I'm like, here I am, thousands of miles away from Atlanta, Georgia, and I have created a connection, like you talked about earlier, with this Muslim leader in Ethiopia because both of our kids are going to the state university, in our respective geographies. It was just ridiculous. So Dan and I come back from Ethiopia and we're like, hey, you know what? We've got to tell more stories that are. We don't do it for this reason, but they do tend to be anti-narrative in the Western media, about Christians who are mobilizing and doing things that you just would never expect. And not only would you never expect them, but frankly, they're very consistent with the Good Samaritan parable in Luke chapter 10, where it was a Samaritan that was the hero of the story. And so, like we always do, we just want to say thank you, Brian, to you and World Vision for kind of giving us
legacy, you guys.
that experience that prompted this podcast and these types of discussions. But because of everything that you've done, everything that you've seen, when you think about Good Samaritans in the true context of Luke chapter 10, what advice would you give to our listeners about living out the role of the Good Samaritan on a daily basis as it was intended, serving people that most of the time are not like you?
Yeah, wow. I mean, what an incredible space to be in. And I mean, we know that God is at work in relationships, and he's at work every day, in every moment, in every relationship, with every human being we come into contact with. And so as soon as we put rules or barriers or any ideas of where we think God can work or is working, we really get in the way of what can happen and what ways God can work through us. And I know at Team World Vision and some of our other programs, we talk about meeting God on the other side of fear and just stepping through that fear, and seeing what God has for us on the other side. And it's in when we're talking about people that are different than us and that God is at work in relationships, that is a perfect place to meet God. That's where breakthrough can happen, is when we're stepping through those uncomfortable things or the things that we're not used to. And then all of a sudden that magic happens, that spark where God is at work. And then we suddenly realize, oh, wait a second, this is really beautiful. And I'm really so happy and thankful that you're at work in this way through me, God. And so why not? And that's, those are just some thoughts I've had, obviously working with a lot of different people that are very different than me, and being uncomfortable a lot. It often is incredible to see what just can happen when we give that moment a chance for God to come in and do it.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you.
How about that, Dan? Brian Frazier, the commish, SEC college graduate, corporate weenie, to now leading peer-to-peer fundraising and Hood to Coast for Team World Vision. One more time, Brian, it is teamworldvision.org or .com?
You got it, yeah. teamworldvision.org.
Teamworldvision. .org/Hood to Coast. Everybody go out and donate to your favorite Hood to Coast runner, whoever it might be. David Hendrickson's probably, near the top, but it is such a great cause. It's such a great experience. Brian, you've been so gracious telling us about your journey and your passion for what's going on at World Vision and your passion for Hood to Coast. We can't thank you enough for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you guys. Yeah, such a privilege. Amazing legacy you guys have with this podcast. Thanks so much for letting me be a part.
2 weeks from today, Dan, I'm going to be at the top of Mount Hood.
I will be supporting
How
from
about
here.
it? Yeah.
I will be supporting from here.
Well, to all our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. It has been a delight to have Brian Frazier with World Vision, the director of peer-to-peer fundraising, on the Walking Through Samaria podcast. Please get interested in the race or World Vision or anything that they're about. They just do incredible work. I am co-host David Hendrickson with my other co-host,
Dan Rivera.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.
For more content like this, visit us at givingcompany.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Walking Through Samaria.